5:30, and so I'm going to get us started. The meeting will come to order. The time is now 5:30 p.m. on Monday, May 22nd, 2023. This is a regular monthly meeting of the District of Columbia Commission on the Arts and Humanities. My name is Reggie Van Lee, Chairperson of the Commission. I'm wearing a dark blue suit and a white shirt. I will now call the roll. When you hear your name, please answer present. Stacey Lee Banks.
Present.
Cora Masters Berry. Cora.
I don't know.
Just say present. We can hear you.
Oh, it came up. Okay, present.
Great. Maggie Fitzpatrick.
Present.
Juanice Floyd. Natalie Hopkinson.
Present.
Kymber Menkiti. Mariah Hall Rooney. Carla Sims. Hector Torres. Gretchen Warden.
Present.
And myself. A quorum is present. This is a meeting of a public body held in open session in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Notice of the meeting was posted on the Commission's website, dcarts.dc.gov, and on the DC Office of Open Government Central Meetings calendar. The meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format. A number of us are at the committee, well, we're all a hybrid. Actually, we're all remote today. We're using the Cisco Webex virtual meeting platform. The meeting is being live streamed to the Commission's YouTube channel. An electronic recording of the meeting will be available for viewing online following the conclusion of the meeting. I will now read the land acknowledgement. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will, some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life, and some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We stand on the ancestral lands of the Nacotchtank and the Piscataway people. We pay respects to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events, and to use such truths to guide the legacy of the Arts Commission. Is there any objection to the agenda that was previously circulated? Hearing no objection, the agenda stands as adopted. So welcome. We have a relatively short agenda today, but we'll get right into it. And as you know, is our tradition, new tradition, to remind us of why we're really here. We always want to hear from the artists, our grantees, the art ecosystem. And today we have a video from Dana Tay-Soon Burgess with the Dana Tay-Soon Burgess Dance Company, who is one of our FY23 GOS grantees. So Patrick, if you could play the video, and we will try to get the gist without having to necessarily listen to all 14 minutes of it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dana Tay-Soon Burgess, and I direct the main modern dance company here in the District of Columbia. Dana Tasso and Burgess Dance Company is celebrating its 30th anniversary season this year. We perform in theaters, including the Kennedy Center, museums across the Smithsonian, as well as public and private schools, libraries, and community villages that embrace our older residents. Our free dance programming reaches over 5,000 in-person audience members in the district each year. Furthermore, we have an online presence that we developed during the great quieting of the pandemic. We'll be sharing a couple of examples of our work with you today. Our repertoire intersects with the visual arts stories of social justice icons and is often performed with live music. This confluence allows us to engage a large audience. We are proud of the diversity of our dancers, designers, musicians, staff, and board. We've also garnered a large national reputation and tour through the U.S. State Department abroad. We are very happy to represent our home, the District of Columbia. You can also tune into my podcast, slantpodcast.com, available on all listening platforms. Slant Podcast explores the Asian American diaspora through interviews with APA artists and writers. I'd like to thank the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities for its support over these 3 decades. Your support allows for our programs to be predominantly free to the public and to serve audiences from all wards. Our first dance is an excerpt from our social justice series. This particular duet is from a tribute to Marian Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you. We will make the full video available to all the public on our website, but I think we get a gist of the impact this program is having. We saw the audiences there. We got a taste of the programming. So delighted always to support dance, but especially someone we've supported now for 3 decades. So this is very impressive. So thank you for that. We have several speakers scheduled to give public comments. Speakers, when I call your name, if you will have 3 minutes for your comments, at which point I may have to ask you to conclude your remarks in the interest of time. So why don't we start with Mr. Eduardo Malaga from the Washington, D.C. Federation of Musicians.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I wanted to just take this opportunity to introduce myself to the commission. I don't think I've had the pleasure before. So thank you for this moment. And I wanted to start off by saying congratulations on your selection of Aaron Myers in his new capacity there as executive director. I think that's a wonderful choice, and I know Aaron a little bit, so I'll, as a musician, I'm fully in support of him in this new role. Although we're going to miss him at some of the performances around town as well. Listen, I come here this evening not to ask for one thing from the commission. Actually, it's an offer to ask for your help to try to get live performances for musicians around town sponsored by our Music Performance Trust Fund. We have access to an annual allocation, which I've had trouble meeting that goal on an annual basis since I've been president. I started here in 2011. But we represent about 1,200 working musicians around the greater Washington, D.C. area. And we're very much interested in partnering with the district DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities to help present performances, free public performances to DC public schools on occasions that would be beneficial when you have celebrations that you would like to highlight. Juneteenth is coming up, and that we would certainly like to work on a project featuring DC musicians for that occasion. MLK Day has been an important date. The MLK Library has a wonderful new venue. I don't think it's been fully utilized. I think it's an opportunity that is a win-win for both of our organizations. Labor Day, of course, because we're a union, we would strongly support anything that we could do working with partners in the DC government to help present musician performances free and open to the public, fully subsidized by Music Performance Trust Fund, which is a fund that is basically derived from recording contracts. Back in the 40s, AFM had its issues with the recording industry and its concerns about working musicians being displaced as a result of this new technology. And one of the results of that was this the creation of this fund, which provided for free public performances. And so I appreciate this opportunity to introduce myself to you and to make this offer of, working together to present the amazing talent that lives in our community that I think is in some ways very much underappreciated in the context of the greater music picture. But we know how valuable all of these folks are to the cultural and the economic fabric of Washington, D.C. These performances that happen in and around the city contribute greatly to that economic fabric. The people that attend those performances, it's not just the ticket prices, but the restaurants. When you go out to dinner before you go to the show, or you want to buy something nice when you show up to the theater or the concert, those shopping stores are getting the benefit of that. Even the babysitters who are going to be watching your kids while you go out to attend those performances. So it's a really important piece of the economic fabric, and anything that we can do to work with you to help support this activity, which I think is just a natural fit, I would welcome any opportunity. That's it.
Great. Thank you. We could not agree with you more on the importance and the opportunity, and we will find a way to work with you both in the Juneteenth opportunity you talked about and the Martin Luther King Day. So I think we have a lot we can do together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Chairman Bentley,
Yes.
I was just curious if Mr. Malaga could describe the annual allocation of funding that the trust fund has for DC musicians. Just want to get a
Oh.
sense of the scale and the scope.
Sure, sure. It's an annual allocation that is provided to us. This year, our allocation was about $66,000 for
Great.
area musicians here. Of course, we work with according to our wage scale book, paying a fair wage for these musicians for their performances. It's right now it's 100% subsidized by MPTF and our local, so it would come at no cost to the commission to present these things.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for joining our meeting. It's good to know about you.
Thank you. Thanks again. Quest Skinner, one of our Ward 5 grantees. Ms. Skinner?
Hello, how are you? So I think I have basically a two-part question. Have the payment issues that we're incurring in, what was that, fiscal year 2022 been handled and resolved? And will the, what is that, relief and recovery fund be available again this year? Or is that dissolved and what's to happen?
So if I could put you on the spot, Gretchen, did you want to answer that? Is Gretchen with us? Or Terrell, perhaps? Oh, Gretchen, yes. You're muted, Gretchen. You're muted, Gretchen.
Just talking away on mute, sorry. To my knowledge, it has been resolved. When we had the last meeting, I think there were only a few that were outstanding. And we were waiting on some of the grantee recipients to actually give us some information. Right now, we have just, as a matter of fact, we were going to vote today, I believe, on, I think it's today.
No, it's not today.
It's not today. We have an upcoming vote in the next month or so on the monies that we will have for next year. And one of the options will be for the relief fund. But we're waiting on the council to approve the budget that we're going to have. I think it's supposed to be reduced from everything that we've heard, which is unfortunate, but it's because of the tax revenue basis that we have. So we should know in the next month or month and a half or so how much we're going to have in what categories. Does that answer your question?
Yes, more or less. I also wonder with the way the funds were allocated last year, the 6-month wait that I incurred was a little bit steep. And it got to a point where I realized the resolve was in me coming to pick it up, but I had suggested that in the very beginning. And of course, you know, Marky was handling it, and it seemed like to kind of be a cat and mouse game for quite some time.
You know, you weren't the only one that experienced that, and I'm so very sorry that happened. But what we found out was that the system had actually been changed. The technology system had changed in terms of the CFO's office. And so it wasn't, we don't really have if we had the power, you'd have to check the same day. But we have to send everything through the chief financial officer's office. And they're the ones that process the check and put everything into the system. And they changed the computer system and did some tweaks. And somehow some of our funding got put in the wrong category. I know this is detailed, but I want to be detailed with you so you understand what happened.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would say, you know, our goal is not to be defensive and to point fingers at other people, but it was a system glitch.
Right.
We are trying to ensure that everything we can do to get the money to our grantees as quickly as possible, we will do.
Yeah.
And for us to work with the other agencies, but I'm not satisfied until we've done all we can do.
And thank you, Reggie, for helping me get so much resolved, because it got to a point where I felt like I was literally walking into a brick wall every day with this. So
I'm sorry.
I
Yeah.
understand. I was getting calls. We were all getting calls from people, and you know, we're pulling out our hair like, what can we do? What can we do? I do believe they fixed the system now. So hopefully we won't have that issue again.
may I suggest a few test runs before?
Absolutely.
You guys know,
Yes.
like, just
Yes.
to be, you know, forward thinking and in hindsight,
Yeah.
and remembering all the pitfalls from last year,
Mhm.
no need to take them forward.
It
Absolutely.
was clear that
Thank you
they
guys
did
for the
just-
resolve, and I look forward to applying this year and getting some more stuff done.
Well, thank you. And to your point, it was clear they didn't test the system. They just went live, and this is what happened. So apologies
course.
again that you had to go through that.
And this is
know
why
that
at 45, we still test everything. And when people go, it's not necessary, we can always go, no, no, no. What's not necessary is the backlash because we didn't take the 15 minutes to put it together.
Exactly, exactly.
Thank you
Thank you, guys.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Mr. Devin Walker from the Uncle Devin Show.
All right. First of all, I want to the commission, to the commission chair and all the members and staff of the full commission, I'd like to thank you all for this opportunity to share a few comments with you. I also would like to congratulate Aaron Myers on his new role as executive director and look forward to working with you. My name is Devin Walker, and I am a Ward 4 DC resident and a resident artist under the Uncle Devin Show. I am co-owner with my wife with the Uncle Devin Show, a DC certified and small business enterprise. We are a multimedia arts integration organization that provides a musical experience for children and families to cultivate their minds. And we also created We Nation Radio, a 24/7 online children's music radio station for those ages 0 to 12. I am a recipient of several commission grants. Thank you. I'm also currently an outreach artist with the Grant Application Assistant Program and a volunteer grant reviewer for the commission. So my work with the commission goes a long way, and you all have been a great partner to us. I'd like to speak to you about really about a system of injustice that exists for resident artists in DC and why there's a strong need to continue to create an equitable, sustainable, and vibrant arts ecosystem where artists are at the decision table. Much too often, artists are exploited by arts organizations who do not see us as professional businesses striving for excellence. This negative perception can be seen in the inequitable pay offered to artists that is inconsistent with the livable wage. It does not consider the taxes, the medical insurance, the liability insurance, the retirement, and other expenses we must pay. And a few years ago, I attempted to work with a local DC arts organization that provided music and arts to DC public and charter schools. But the organization held as a standard practice encouraging artists to volunteer to conduct a free assembly in exchange for possibly getting work later. I couldn't, in good conscience, agree to this, and I was forced to search for other opportunities outside of this organization. Therefore, we decided to become a certified business and small business in DC. And you all may know that district agencies who contracts in excess of $250,000 require a 35% SBE subcontracting utilization. But the law states that nonprofits are exempt from this requirement, which gives them more of a monopoly in our industry that is to the detriment of artists. Even though the commission is not involved in the procurement process, I am actively lobbying to change this law and would love the commission to work with us work with our organization to do so. Frequently, we're all, well, let me just conclude so I won't go over my 3 minutes. I know that there are steps that the commission has already taken to address some of these concerns, and thank you so much. We heard a lot of the changes that you made. I'm interested in learning more about the steps that the commission has and will be taking to create more of an equitable space for artists and how we as artists can be a part of this process. Also, if it does not already exist, I would like to recommend that the commission require any arts organization that receives DC funds to DC commission funds to utilize something similar to the Teaching Artists Guild's pay calculator to compensate artists minimally at a livable wage. I'm willing to work with the commission and to help bring about this in any way possible. I don't bring about, anyone that knows me, I believe in my PSAs, problem, solution, and actions. What are the problems, but what is the solution and what actions I can help and take to bring this about? And I look forward to working with you all in any capacity that I can to bring this about.
Great, great. Well, thank you. I know that Christian Warden is chair of our grants committee and Terrell Johnson is our senior grants manager, listening carefully to that. And a fair amount of what you were saying is in the works. So stay tuned, but we do want to engage you in a more significant way going forward. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Good. Those are the public comments that I had on my list. I take it there's no one that we left out. I want to do a sort of brief chairman's report before we go into the executive director's report. Since we last met, two significant activities have occurred. First, the continued process of developing the budget. And second, a meeting of arts constituents from across the city to explore the possibility of an international art fair, sort of Art Basel-like festival in DC, and its positive impact on the arts ecosystem in DC and the economics and commerce of the city. In his executive director report, Aaron will cover both, but I wanted to punctuate one of these activities and set the stage for future discussions, and that is the topic of the budget. We received a May 16th, 2023 draft from the Committee on the Whole on possible language for Bill 25-202, and the three items that are most noteworthy. The first is a limit on the growth of dedicated sales tax revenue for our commission to 2% annually. And I want to read the wording from that draft so you understand what I'm talking about. It says in fiscal years 2024, 2025, 2026, and 2027, there shall be dedicated to the Arts and Humanities Fund from the sales tax revenue collected at rate provided by the lead in language of subsection A of this section, the lesser of 5% of the sales tax revenue collected, or an amount equal to 102% of the amount dedicated to the Arts and Humanities Fund in the prior fiscal year pursuant to this subsection. So what that will translate into is our budget, if this is enacted for those years, could only increase by 2%. So it'll be 102% of that year. So an increase of only 2%. Now, while this growth limitation concerns us, as the need for funding for our arts constituents actually continues to grow as opposed to decline or stay stable, we understand the current state of the city's economics and have said a number of times that we will work with whatever amounts entrusted to us and distribute it equitably. So again, we would love for that restriction not to be there, but to the extent the city has these economic challenges, we understand, and we'll make sure whatever money we get, we will distribute equitably. Item 2 is more concerning, as it potentially challenges our ability to provide funds equitably. And I'll read number 2. Number 2 says, awards of general operating support grants pursuant to subparagraph A2 of this paragraph shall be competitive, and each application of an eligible organization shall be reviewed in cohorts of similar budget size, with grant awards tiered in relation to the grantee's budget size, provided that an award to an individual organization may not exceed 50% of the organization's annual operating budget exclusive of district funds. So basically, this is saying that we will not be allowed, if this goes into play, to grant funding to an organization in excess of 50% of the actual budget. This may not exceed 50% of their budget limits our ability to look at each organization case by case and determine what level of funding, with regard to the budget size, will help build capacity and sustainability for the organization. It is our hope that this may not exceed stipulation can be and will be removed. Last year, we've heard from a number of our small organizations that received grants in excess of 50% of their budgets, and those funds have changed the operations and future prospects of the organization in a transformational way. And we are here to drive that level of transformation. So we do not agree with and hope that they can remove that stipulation that prohibits us from giving grants to organizations in excess of 50% of their budgets. Lastly, item 3 is also concerning, not so much in its existence, but in how it is funded. And number 3 says it's around large capital grants program. It is established within the commission a large capital grants program to provide sub-grants to eligible organizations for the purpose of funding large capital grants for facility improvements in an amount exceeding $900,000 per grant. Now, while we fully support the need for funding for capital grants, this could represent a $5 million carve-out, and we need to ensure that this funding does not come at the expense and to the detriment of other organizations. We are proposing an approach that accommodates the 2% annual growth limit on funding. It finds funding for as much as $5 million in capital funds that doesn't negatively impact other potential grantees. And it doesn't require a may not exceed 50% limitation on grants based on the grantee's budget size. We feel very strongly that this addresses the economic challenge in the city in a share the pain manner, but still ensures equity in how whatever funds we're given, we distribute them equally and equitably. Aaron will speak more to this in his executive director report. He will also speak more about the excellent and exciting meeting of arts constituents from across the city that was held last week as we explore the possibility of an international art fair in the nation's capital. With that, I'll turn it to Aaron in the executive director's report.
Good evening, everybody. I am a month and a few days in, and I'm still here, and I enjoy everything about it so far. I have a great team here, and I'm looking forward to continuing. To pick up on what Chairman Van Lee was speaking about as related to the FY24 BSA committee, I believe Patrick would have been able to receive those very documents that Reggie was reading from. And in this budget process, we're following it closely as it does its rounds around the council. Now, what we got was a second iteration, and we anticipate there may be one or two more. But I don't believe we're in a position where we can wait for us to accept possibly what is given the direction in which this process is going. So we have sent to the chair of the council our suggestions and possible solutions to what has been proposed. As Reggie has stated, with the 2% tax, we have found some ways to deal with that to a degree. But what we notice is that the 50% general operating services cap, what that actually does, it negatively impacts our smaller organizations in the bottom two tiers of how we fund than it does the larger organizations. And so it gives the impression as if that we possibly could be again funding larger organizations through this particular piece of legislation at the expense of our smaller organizations, which is something that I believe the commission and we all have fought hard to not continue. Reggie speaks often about equity, and with whatever we're given, I think we're doing our due diligence to make sure it's given out equitably. But we want to make sure that our starting place comes from a spot where it is as equitable and fair as possible. We have in our solution provided a workaround in a sense so that those organizations with budgets that do not exceed over $250,000 would not be impacted as harshly by this piece of legislation as others. I think lastly, when it comes to the capital campaign fund that they are proposing through the commission, what we see here is that the $5 million would come out off of the top of the budget. And in doing so, that then reduces our ability, once again, to provide the dollars we need for our grantees as their needs, as has been said before by the chair, are indeed rising. So we have proposed, offer our proposals to the chair of the council. We're hoping over this week, to be in conversations and meetings to understand and identify which stakeholders in the community we need to reach out to, but each of you, to see each one of you as commissioners who we could reach out to as well, as we can come up with solutions, ideas about how to really ensure that our proposal and our suggestions are heard fairly by the council and the greater community. Before I move further into that, since Reggie did come out of that piece with his report, and I just said this, he really stated everything that I could state as we talked earlier on the phone. Is there any questions to any of what you've heard in regard?
Yeah, Aaron, I just wanted to just flag this, in terms of the large and small question. When we worked on the Committee for Diversity and Inclusion and Belonging, one of the things we looked at, I mean, we would love to fund everyone, large and small, but one of the things we looked at was the other sources of funding that larger organizations in the city were receiving. And that might be a corporate sponsor, that might be foundation sponsorship. And what we saw in our analysis was that smaller organizations were less likely to receive those streams of funding and support. So I just flag that, in this question as we talk to the council about it, is that the smaller the organization or the individual artist, the less likely they are to have a corporate sponsor or a foundation sponsor. And so it's negatively impacting them kind of twofold when you look at it in comparison to the larger organization. So I commend you for, advocating for all artists, large and small, and would just encourage you to continue to do so.
And if I could just punctuate that point, because unfortunately, some people receive what we're saying as bashing large organizations in the favor of small. And we want to do neither. We neither want to penalize large, nor do we want to penalize small. We're trying to be equitably distributing this money. And I testify to the fact that for 8 years, I chaired one of the largest arts organizations in the city. For 3 years, I was vice chair of another of them. And I've also chaired small organizations. I understand the challenges, and we're trying to strike the right balance. But we're concerned that this language, as shared with us so far, would cause us to be challenged around our ability to do that equitable distribution of funds. So I hear your point, Maggie, and it is something that we hold fast to.
Something that's important about the GOS funding is that for those smaller organizations, GOS funding gives you the ability to really seek out those consultants who are professionals in development and in fundraising that you otherwise would not be able to afford without this type of funding. It's those networks and connections that those consultants and experts bring to the table to help bolster and help build the capacity of the smaller nonprofits. And so limiting the amount of money that we could fund without discriminating against the size of their budget limits our ability to really help them to walk and then to run versus making them solely always dependent upon certain grants, which to Maggie's point, as someone who just came off of a board of a small nonprofit, you never get the great luxury of getting those great corporate sponsors, which sometimes also we deal with racial barriers and being able to see that funding come, especially in the city. As I move to our grantees, there are 9 people who are awaiting payment. That's what the whole list has been brought down to 9. These cases vary as to why the payments have not been received. Examining these cases, CAH has not been negligent. I want to repeat to that. We have not been negligent in its work to process their payments. Our team has and is displaying its commitment to helping these individuals navigate their challenges to get the desired solution. I've called each one of these people today, either leaving a voicemail or talking directly to them. And I plan to follow up with each of them on Friday. When it comes to our operations, I'm actively working to continue and increase our attention to our IDEA action plan. And our DEI officer is slated as one of our new FTE hires in FY24. Over the last month, I've met with most of the staff on a one-on-one basis. Everyone came in a solution-based posture. And some of these solutions, ranging from making elements of our process paperless to certain trainings that would benefit the employees, are being explored and implemented now. I've called for a total SWOT analysis of the agency, ranging from examining our operational systems to how our technology works internally and externally. Our technology assessment will happen this Wednesday by Octo, where we will learn how to upgrade our equipment, software, and improve our wireless cellular connectivity, both in this suite in our offices and the equipment we use when teleworking. This will positively impact our virtual meetings with the public and our commissioners' meetings. We will be getting an IT staffer under our new partnership with Octo. And that's the Office of Computer Technology. That's, thankfully for us, is right upstairs. We began formulating our upgraded communications plan, and we'll be announcing the hiring of a new communications director soon. I think anyone here who's ever had to deal with DC government understands that the way that the government has traditionally gotten information out to the people has been challenging. Sometimes the easiest place to hide information is in plain sight. So I'm excited about us upgrading our communications plan and actually getting one together. This will enable us to improve our communication internally among staff, within other agencies, and most of all with our current and future grantees. A wellness plan for the agency is moving forward, and we've had input from the staff with the committee preparing recommendations for implementation. The very behavior we want to see regarding wellness must be modeled by its leadership. So I'm being intentional in modeling this behavior and encouraging our managers to do the same. If there are any wellness practices that you would like to suggest or wellness systems you've seen successfully implemented in other places, please either email me or Denise Jackson, and you can find her email on our website. As far as our programs are concerned, I'm working with Commissioner Hopkinson to fulfill the NEA mandate by implementing a folk life program here at the Commission through a partnership with Howard University. It's important for us to realize that the NEA has mandated all of its state art agencies to have a folk life program. And I believe Washington, D.C. may have been looked over for a number of years because of our urban and our large African-American and people of color population here. So we do have culture. There is work that needs, and there's culture that needs to be preserved and studied. So you may recall the presentation by Joy Ford Austin at our last meeting. Commissioner Hopkinson will be speaking more to this later in the meeting, but I would like to state that I and the agency are fully committed to supporting this program. Look forward to seeing how this program and partnership can grow in the future. But for our commissioners, as some of you saw in person at our last commission meeting, there is a working space for all of our commissioners here in the suite. We have a dedicated staff person that will be assigned to the commissioners to help facilitate use of that office space. We've also divided our grantees up by award, and we'll be connecting our grantees to the commissioners by the wards that you live in, so that you can schedule Zoom meetings or Webex meetings with your the people in your community and your ward, as well as you can know more about what they're doing and how you can support them. Our staff member, Andia, will help facilitate virtual meetups between the commissioners and our grantees. Our commissioners will also be receiving instructions on how to get us a good image to use on both our website and to hang in our offices. It's my desire for people to see your pictures in the community and know who you are so they can reach out to you when they want to praise the commission, critique the commission, and have questions. This effort is something the agency has desperately needed for several years, and I'm excited for the opportunity to create another avenue where we can be in even deeper relationship with the community. I'm almost done, everybody. Past events, Art Week DC. Friday, we met at the Phillips Collection for something I've not witnessed in DC. A multidisciplinary work group, the beginning of many, ranging in age, color, and background, engaged in what art has been, what art is, what art should be, and could be in Washington, D.C. Our 5 groups were tasked with questions, and after working one with the other, reported back to the entire group. 50 plus stakeholders focused on various solutions and holding each other accountable. After this event, I, like many others, heard similar type of feedback. 1, this being the first time they've spoken to many of their counterparts. And 2, when can dialogues like this happen again? We are currently preparing our debrief, follow-up survey, and next steps in the process of what we need and watering the seeds that were planted during that meeting. This past week, Events DC Resource Fair. This past Thursday, CAH was invited to join the Events DC First Resource Fair at the RISE Demonstration Center. It was an event geared at providing nonprofit organizations with resources needed to improve their community programming, with a room for exhibitors to share their programming, as well as another room with several workshops throughout the afternoon. All parties considered it a success and are already anticipating collaborating on similar endeavors in the future. Our fellowship mixer, and I encourage y'all to follow all of us on Instagram because we try to put some of this stuff there as well. This past Friday, CAH hosted a mixer of our FY23 fellowship grantees to connect and network with each other at the Royal Sands Social Club, just a few blocks away from the office. Interest was high among the hundreds of grantees, with almost 100 RSVPing, dozens sharing regrets, and 22 attending in person. Future events among consideration are exploring a variety of options to provide diverse environments for socializing, including a Sunday afternoon at the Drum Circle at Malcolm X Park, or a weekday brown bag lunch at the National Portrait Gallery Courtyard Cafe. Trans Pride. This past Saturday, CAH tabled for the first time as a part of the exhibitor fair at Trans Pride's DC event at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library. This event engaged community members, activists, volunteers, organizations, and others committed to supporting and advocating for trans, non-binary, and gender-expansive folks in the metropolitan DC area. In addition to connecting with attendees, there were other organizations who were also exhibiting who were interested in learning more about our funding opportunities for their programs and for the community. Upcoming events, Black Pride. This upcoming weekend, CAH plans on tabling at Black Pride. We're still finalizing those details. The first official Black Gay Pride event in the United States and one of 2 officially recognized festivals for the African-American LGBT community. We would be participating as part of their organization and vendor expo. Capitol Pride. On Sunday, June 11th, CAH plans on tabling at Capitol Pride's Street Festival, which is a full day of entertainment on 3 stages, food, drink, and advocacy with over 300 exhibitors. The festival is the largest annual event in the nation's capital region and continues to be free to the public. Timing is particularly good as we will have had a number of grant programs open the week earlier, and some of those that are currently open not closing until the week after. So for both Black Pride and Capitol Pride, we have a great way to introduce our grants to a larger population. Lastly, many of you may remember our Labor Day Festival. Well, it will return this year. This festival is personal to me, as it was the byproduct of a compromise of some advocacy efforts I helped to lead. The theme of this year is 50 years hip hop and 50 years of home rule. Over the past month, we've had intentional conversations with the hip hop community to understand the history of hip hop here in DC, its current challenges, and its future. These are only beginning conversations that I hope will allow us to glean how we can further support this community. Our festival will celebrate the elements that have comprised and supported hip hop in the here in DC, which includes DC poetry and spoken word, jazz, go-go, and of course, hip hop. More information is to come. It's my goal to have similar conversations with members of other genres and disciplines represented here in the city. So that is my report. And if there's any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Any questions from anyone? Thank you, Aaron. We'll go to our committee reports. Finance Committee. Kymber, do we have anything to report? Any updates?
No, I think we got a good summary with that report, so I think we're good to go. No additional report from finance.
Good. Any other questions from finance? I can report on the executive committee. We met last week, a week before. 3 topics we talked about: the fiscal year 2023 budget spending plan, and we had a fulsome discussion of priority items for funding if we have additional funds. And earlier, someone asked, are we thinking about, I think it was Quest Skinner who asked about additional funds. And the areas that we have endorsed as priority areas, 1, of course, enhancements to existing grants. 2nd, a special BIPOC fund that had been suggested by the IDEA committee and I think endorsed by the staff as well. 3rd, immediate emergency relief funding. So if indeed there's extra money for that, that is in the consideration as well. And as Gretchen said, we need to determine, but that is certainly on the list. And last, a DC Arts Youth Summit that was also recommended by the IDEA committee. So we provided that information to the staff, and they will work through that and come back to the commissioners with their proposal of whatever money may be extra that we have, how might we spend it. The other 2 topics were an update on the CAH Foundation and the status there. And the last was to discuss the May 19th Art Week event, the stakeholders meeting that Aaron talked about as well. So that's what happened in the executive committee. And if I missed anything from any executive committee members that were there, anything you'd want to add? Okay. I'll move on to new business. Is Jeff on? So Jeff would have given us an update on the foundation work, but I'll tell you that it's proceeding. We're still looking at what other state arts agencies have done in the foundation space and moving towards how do we prepare the legislation that we know will be necessary. How do we move to actually apply for the 501c3 status? Our goal is to get this foundation in place by next year this time. So we have a little time, not a lot of time, but a little time to do that. And the foundation's creation is indeed linked to this Art All Week program that we're thinking about, because that could be big funding for Art All Week that would not then have to come from the commission or any other place. So to be continued on the foundation work. And now, Natalie, do you want to talk about the Folk Life and the partnership with CAH and Howard University around the whole Folk Life initiative?
Hello.
Hello.
All right. So thank you for giving me a moment to talk about this Folk Life program, which is a big passion of mine, this area of interest. So I did want to say happy belated DC Natives Day. That was on May 20th. So I'm not a native, but I did give birth to 2 DC natives. So I'm celebrating with them and with all of you. The main thing that I wanted to say is I didn't want too much time to pass before I acknowledge the incredible presentation that Joy Ford Austin did to continue the work at Traditional Arts DC at Howard. So Joy is herself, as many of us know, a cultural treasure in this city. And so it was really a privilege to have her here and to be, share that information so passionately. So I'm no longer leading the effort to establish Traditional Arts DC directly at Howard, since I took another job at another university across town where I am right now. But I did want to signal my support for it to continue and to express my appreciation for Dean Dana Williams and Dr. Benjamin Talton, who is director of Moreland Spingarn Research Center. These are 2 outstanding cultural scholars that now hold the reins of this project. And I'm so grateful to them, and the whole city owes them a lot of gratitude for taking this on. So this is work, it really goes beyond all of us who are here on this call and who's watching out in YouTube land. The DC Arts Commission, and really every other arts commission in America, has a very strong Eurocentric bias. As one prominent local politician said, the arts are a, quote, white thing. And to the extent that that's true, which it's not, but it is how policymakers have defined the arts. So our arts policies are modeled after European arts councils, which had roots in the royal patronage systems. This is a top-down approach for the arts. Folk life or traditional arts is really a powerful antidote to that. They're broadly speaking, they're expressions of everyday life, the art of the people. So whereas the dominant Western art patronage streams flow from the top down, royal courts, feudal lords, exclusive arts institutions, and gatekeepers, folk life flows from the grassroots up, and it centers the folk. So if you missed her presentation, you can actually see it on YouTube channel. It was from last month's April meeting for CAH. But the long story short is that this is a pilot initiative that began with a simple letter in 2022 from the Commission on the Arts and Humanities indicating that Howard University would be the nonprofit partner that would carry out the folk life function. There are 6 different states in the United States that carry out this function in conjunction with universities. They are Missouri, Michigan, Indiana, Arizona, and Oregon. But Howard would be the very first HBCU, and that really does matter. DC has not had a folk life program since 1996. I was actually able to interview Michael Licht, who was the state folklorist for DC from 1986 to 1996. At the time that it was announced that DC would get its first folk life program, some scholars, prominent scholars locally, were asked why that they did not have one or why there wasn't one. And there was a folklorist at GW, George Washington, named Dr. John Vlach, who described the reasons for the lack of interest in programmatic attention in DC arts. And he said that, and this is a quote, "The number one reason is that so much of the folklore of Washington is Afro-American. And unless you know how to study it, you're not going to do it." So, this is from 1986, and which is a pretty stunning statement given that there's 2 HBCUs in the city and plenty of Afro-American cultural resources, researchers here. But Michael Lick fulfilled this role from the mid-1980s here at the DC Arts Commission. He did an amazing job. He surveyed hundreds of Black church musicians. He documented go-go. He did exhibits at grocery stores. He did concerts and public housing projects. And he even got Stanley Nelson, who's now a famed filmmaker, to do an educational video with the go-go band, Junkyard Band. So when the agency made the decision to cancel the program in 1996, something very unfortunate happened with his archives, is that they went missing. Nobody really knows where they are. They sort of got caught in some sort of interagency dispute. And so as a cultural scholar, this neglect is very, very painful to me. So in 2019, the NEA forced the Arts Commission to create a folk life program. Every state that did not have one, the National Endowment for the Arts said you are required to do so. So Howard stepped up. The university raised more than $250,000 in non-CAH grant funds to do programs and research. More than double of that came in-kind funding and support. Many people were ready to help. So I do want to shout out the Office of Cable Television, Film, Music, and Entertainment, led by Angie Gates. She was the largest champion of this project. Brink Media was an advertising company with a DC office, provided free video production for nearly 2 years. The Kennedy Center invited Ronald Moten and me to be members of the very first Culture Caucus. They gave us $10,000 to support activations on their beautiful campus at the Reach. Smithsonian Folklife has been a partner who started us down this road of doing many oral history archival projects. DC Public Library established the Go-Go Preservation Week. And of course, the Go-Go Museum partnered to produce the Go-Go Awards in 2020 during the pandemic. The Go-Go Awards got 100,000 unique visitors, thousands of comments during a 5-hour live stream filmed at locations all over DC. And remember, this is during the pandemic. We also work with Charles Stevenson Jr., who was the former chair of the DC Arts Commission and author of the first scholarly work on Go-Go. He's also the founding manager of the Go-Go Band EU. And with Charles Stevenson, we produced 5 short documentaries about the history of EU to celebrate its 50th anniversary. So we documented more than 120 members who'd come in and out of the band, some of who are living, some who had passed on. And speaking of missing archives, Charles also donated his gold record that EU got for The Butt, which was featured in Spike Lee's film School Days. He donated this gold record to the DC Arts Commission, and no one at the DC Arts Commission has any memory of these. So all the projects that are being added at the Moreland Spring Iron at Howard University under the leadership of Dr. Benjamin Talton, it's really important that it's happening. So I just wanted to take a moment, and so I'm landing the plane here. I just wanted to take a moment to speak about this because it's really important. I know more than many how short life can be, and it's really important that this work documenting DC's creative history is not left to any individuals. So I would really like to see a strong, well-lubricated marriage between Howard and the DC Arts Commission to ensure that this work continues and that DC's arts cultural history will never be muted. And so I just want to thank you for giving me the time, Commissioner Van Lee, and thank you. And I'm looking forward to working with Commissioner Floyd, Barry, and the rest of the Diversity and Equity Committee to continue to move this project forward.
Great, thank you. Actually, I'm going to ask the executive committee to partner with the IDEA committee to push this forward. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Is there any other new business? There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. I'm sorry. Yes.
I wanted to, if we could, just pay our respects to Hugo Medrano, the wife of husband of Rebecca. Many of you know the artistic director for Gala Hispanic Theater, who passed away earlier this morning, surrounded by his family. And I just send some good thoughts and energy to that entire family, which is both personal and then also within the community. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. With that being said, we are adjourned. Our next meeting is June 26th at 5:30 p.m. And we came in just under an hour. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.